my buddies, Ohio State group chat that I have, they sent me some tape of Will Howard on Twitter, about a 5.5 minute video, maybe 2 weeks ago. And so I kind of got excited for him back then. And it got me encouraged because he is mobile, like you said. He runs a lot of read option near the goal line, and he's got a cannon for an arm. So I'm pretty darn excited about the prospect of him starting and being a 1 year fix. That really, really does excite me. I was honestly looking forward to KJ Jefferson maybe, but it seemed like Ohio State wasn't very interested in him. So I'm excited for Will.
So, Peter, when you see one of these highlight reels, the only thing I'll say about that is if it's his very best work, then there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with looking at a player's very best work, because then that shows this is the best he can be. This is the very best. This is the ceiling. But also you would like to see the downside. He threw
I definitely
10
do.
interceptions this year.
That makes me want to go watch the TCU game from last year, like the complete game, just to see, okay, what are we actually getting here in Will? Because you're totally right. I did just see the highlights, and it did get me probably more excited than I should be. But yeah, I want to watch the complete
Texas
game
from this year.
What's
That might
that?
be, from a talent standpoint, in facing the kind of defense that you would want to see him against, and it's obviously this year, not last year. You may want to check out the Texas game.
That's a good point.
By the way, you have an early feel on Howard, Mark? What do you have you watched much tape? I did watch about 3 or 4 Kansas State games this year.
I watched more Will Howard in 2022 than I did this past season, and I think he has 2 advantages over Kyle McCord that are pretty obvious. One is that he's mobile. Mm-hmm. He's a willing runner. He's capable of running. The defense has to somewhat respect that. He's not dynamic. He's not super elusive, but he can tuck the ball and run and gain yardage. And that also serves him well in the pocket in terms of escapability. Number 2 is that we are going to be evaluating Will Howard after throwing 800 to 1,000 passes in college football as a 3-year starter. We're going to be making that judgment comparison versus Kyle McCord with no experience. So he better be better. He should be better. He should be making better decisions.
Well, I mean, I told you my obvious drawbacks of McCord. It was 3 things. It was consistency and a lack thereof, because, you go back to, like, the Team Up North game is a perfect example. He always got off to bad starts. Go back and look at that first quarter, was awful. Mm-hmm. He essentially throws a pick 6. He should have had a second interception that Stover had to break up on the drive that made it 7-3. He missed a few open receivers. Now, to be fair, he did play well in the second, third, and into the fourth quarter. He made some good throws. And the last pick wasn't on him. The ball, he was hit, and that was the interception. So, I mean, I get that. However, it was just always like the first half against Maryland was horrible. The first half against Rutgers was horrible. The first half against Wisconsin was horrible. That's why I was saying about not seeing enough growth.
Yeah.
And, his interception total was low, but there were games where he had dropped interceptions, i.e. Notre Dame, which would have ended it. He had a dropped interception against Minnesota. I know he actually, as I just mentioned, he had one in the first quarter against the Team Up North that should have been dropped. And then the second component that I would say, and this is kind of along the lines of the consistency, is I say he always had that, what the hell are you doing throw? Where you stare down the receiver, threw back across his body into coverage, or, did what quarterbacks do that leads to interceptions. And on top of that, the third factor is what you've talked about, mobility. Those were the 3 things that I had major problems with in watching him play over the course of a season.
Well, we would have to go back and look at Will Howard's tape from this year. I saw, I don't know how many Kansas State games, not much of anything. It's not like I sat down from beginning to end and watched Kansas State play any games this year that I can recall, but I saw bits and pieces. And again, I saw more of him the year before. He threw 10 We'd have to go back and see the nature of those 10 interceptions, but he threw 10. So he threw more than McCord did.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, I think the touchdowns, was it slightly more for Howard?
He was 24-10 on TDs and picks.
I thought he had 27, if I wasn't mistaken. Maybe that was the year before. I'm not sure on that one.
I believe last year he was actually 15-4 TDs and picks.
Oh, in 22?
Because he was not the starter at the beginning of the season. Adrian Martinez was.
Oh, that's right. The former Nebraska transfer.
Yes. 24-10 this year, 15-4 last year. So Kyle McCord had a better touchdown to interception ratio.
Right. I mean,
And a better completion percentage.
McCord had 6 interceptions, but as I said, he probably had about 5 or 6 dropped interceptions this year, as far as when I watch McCord play too, Mark. So, I mean, you could also look at it because they do keep a stat called turnover-worthy plays.
Sure.
And, I do wonder how many of those McCord had this year compared to Howard. If somebody's got it, wants to put it in the chat, feel free. But, there was certain instances where McCord was very lucky to only have 6 this year, in my view.
Well, I got to think that unless he's extremely lucky, that most quarterbacks had 3 or 4 drops.
Yeah. Not to mention, I could say the intentional groundings that McCord would induce, and on top of that, there were some instances where he had a couple of fumbles too. There are some other issues there that we can dive into that weren't exactly glistening about his resume. And it's interesting how he ends up at Syracuse and not necessarily.
Well, that's either an indication of his lack of skill set, or that's that plus him wanting to guarantee himself a starting position.
That's true. I mean, he's an East Coast guy. Maybe there's also that connection. They got the new coach up there in Fran Brown, right, Mark?
Yep.
So, yeah, I think every Ohio State fan has to see, because, but you had to make this move if you're Ryan Day, because you just didn't know what you have in Devin Brown. Because of basically he's working on his 3rd injury after that, after the bowl game.
No, I get that. Are they going to be doing the same thing next year? Are they just going to continue in this cycle?
Well, I think the argument they would say is because Nolan's a 5-star that's coming in, Mark, is this maybe a bridge quarterback?
Sure. I know that's the argument.
You probably heard that term in
Sure.
the NFL, is you have like that veteran quarterback that you bring in as a bridge before you start your younger quarterback in the upcoming years. Because obviously you don't want to throw a freshman quarterback in right away, even if he is a 5-star.
I just don't want to see this become a cycle.
No, I agree. I mean, it's interesting. People talked about the McCarthy thing, Mark, versus McCord, and I know that's obviously an ongoing debate. To me, Ohio State's quarterback was on their roster 2 years ago and playing on Monday night. And there ain't no difference. And believe you me, there's a major difference between. I'll take Quinn Ewers over Kyle McCord any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Oh, sure. Yes.
That ain't even close.
No, it's not.
So, I mean,
if Quinn Ewers is the quarterback, maybe Ohio State's playing tonight. Or
I wonder if our team up north fans would acknowledge that Quinn Ewers is a lot better than Kyle McCord. They're trying to talk Ohio State fans out to saying that McCord's not that bad, but Quinn Ewers is, different level than Kyle McCord. Let's just be clear on that one.
He is. Although he wasn't projected to be. They were both 5-stars.
No, yours was the 1st or 2nd rated quarterback in his class, Mark.
I thought Ewers was 1 and McCord was like 5.
Okay, well, I mean, Ewers was still higher rated, but
sure, but I'm just saying they were both 5-stars.
True. Yeah, I still wonder, and I think most Ohio State fans wonder about the package deal of McCord and Marvin, and how much Marvin just made McCord, both high school and college to a certain extent.
Sure. Well, that's in the rear view mirror.
No, it is. You got to keep moving. And, that's where I think this spring game is going to be interesting and tell a lot. Like I said, this is Is that a good way to put it? Poor man's Haskins-Burrow?
It is a poor man's version.
Yeah, because that was the competition they had in 18.
Yep.
To me, this is my opinion on it. I feel like Will Howard's not that big an upgrade from Kyle McCord. I think he is an upgrade. I just don't think it's substantial enough to make Ohio State fans happy. A lot of them, because of how demanding that they are, they want their quarterbacks to be great. And McCord wasn't enough for them, even though they won 11-1. But what do you think? Do you think he's a substantial upgrade over McCord, or not too much of an upgrade?
Well, I think the first thing that we've got to consider is that we're going to be evaluating Will Howard after throwing 800 passes in college football. So for the Ohio State fan that is going to say, we know what Kyle McCord did last year, we know nothing about Will Howard, we're not watching Kansas State football. So when he shows up week 1 against Akron, we're going to start watching him and see how he does compared to Kyle McCord. They're going to be comparing Will Howard after 800 passes and 3 starting seasons at Kansas State, or really 2 full starting seasons basically at Kansas State, versus Kyle McCord being completely inexperienced. So that's going to be an unfair comparison. So Will Howard better be better. He should be better. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that he's not a statue. So he has elusiveness, not really elusiveness. He's mobile. He's 6'5". He can run. He can escape. So they're going to provide, and Ryan Day better, not that I should be pointing at him, telling him, you better let him run. Not that he's got to be running around like a fool, but this is one skill set that he has that Kyle McCord doesn't have. So you better take advantage of it to a certain extent. Now, he doesn't need to be running around when it's 48-3 against, sorry, I won't bring up Indiana, against Northwestern.
Hey, maybe with Signetti, maybe the defense, can get after him a little bit.
He doesn't need to do that. But I tend to agree with you that it's not like, so Cam Ward is largely believed to have been the best guy on the market. And obviously he has now made a different decision. But most people have ranked Will Howard to be the second best quarterback. I don't think there's a big separation between Will Howard and KJ Jefferson. If anything, statistically, KJ Jefferson's a better quarterback. Statistically, he had back-to-back seasons in the SEC, 21 touchdowns, 4 picks, and 24 touchdowns, 5 picks, and was a 69% completion percentage. And you talk about a mobile quarterback, he runs like a tank. He runs over safeties. He's a real athlete. So I don't know what Ryan Day didn't like about KJ Jefferson.
It was probably more just perception, because at this point, like Ohio State, their fans, they want perceptionally success. They want perceived success. And with KJ Jefferson having, the poor season that he just had at Arkansas.
Yeah.
And if you look at the transfer board, because it's all about rankings and ratings, and Jefferson's down there the 18th best quarterback in the portal, which I disagree with.
18th?
He's 18th on 247 Sports of all the quarterbacks that transferred. He's 18th. I could be wrong. I don't know if that's an exact number, but he's not one in the top 10. He's pretty low. So I think Ohio State fans would have panicked with Jefferson based off of that, because they had said that he's not good because he's not one of the top available quarterbacks or whatever. Whereas Will Howard, like you said, is a lot higher.
Aiden Childs, number 1.
Which is crazy. He's talented.
So, that kind of doesn't make sense, but I'm not going to argue with 247. This must be just a pure talent evaluation, because he's obviously not proven anything. Dante Moore's number 2. And you talk about somebody that hasn't proven anything, and when he was given time to play this year, he was a bit of a train wreck. Malik Murphy's 3. I'm a big believer in him. Duke, Manny Diaz, that was a great pickup. Malachi Nelson at 4. Caden Salter, who's still available, at 5. And I got to think Miami's going to go hard after him.
They need somebody.
Auburn and Miami, I would think, are the 2 big candidates. Will Howard 6. Riley Leonard, 7. Brock Vandegrift's 8. Daquin Finn is 9. And Dylan Gabriel's 10. So there's your list. Will Rogers, I was kind of surprised. And those, and this is not a knock on Will Rogers. He is one of the most prolific quarterbacks in the history of college football. If you look at his statistics, obviously he played in the Mike Leach system, so that did not hurt. But Washington fans are going to have to get used to. They're not going to see these like 60-yard rockets next season out of Will Rogers. No, it's going to be dink, dunk, dink.
I mean,
dink,
they're thinking of air raid, but it's like he throws 5-yard passes. It's not the 65-yard bombs down the field. It's not the same air raid at all. But yeah, KJ Jefferson on that list was 22nd. So I was higher on what I said than what he's on the list. He's 22nd below Brendan Sorsby, according to 247. Below Brendan Sorsby. That's where they put KJ Jefferson. That's unbelievable. I just don't think that he's the 22nd best quarterback transfer.
He threw, again, 21 TDs and 4 picks and 24 TDs and 5 picks in 2 consecutive years at Arkansas. And I don't have it in front of me. I've got those numbers locked. But he had like 10 or 12 rushing touchdowns on top of that. He accounted for like 35, 36 touchdowns, and he didn't throw a lot of picks. And he had a great completion percentage. Wow. Yeah, they've got Nate Johnson and Curtis Rourke ahead of him. And they've got Jaden Mayava, who I know who he is. I've never seen him play at UNLV. Jordan McLeod.
And Will Howard, I mean, I'm happy for Will Howard. I always, hope for guys that, go to a bigger school and maybe can ball out and have success. But I just know that Ohio State's fans, they want you to be really successful. You have to do better than Kyle McCord. That's the benchmark. And I just think looking at McCord's stats and what he did, Will Howard, it's not going to be easy for him to just be that much better. It's not going to be easy. I mean, he has to actually perform really well to be better than McCord. And he's got to beat that team up north, as he's already put online. It's all over Twitter that he said, we got to beat that team up north in Michigan. So, I mean, he's got a lot of expectations. I wouldn't want it if I was him. I mean, it'd be a lot better to be at USC or Kansas State where, it's not as many expectations, especially Kansas State, USC more. But, you don't have that much pressure right now at USC as you do at Ohio State.
You would possibly rile up our USC guy Tim if he was on, but I'm not saying that Ohio State is a better program all time than USC or anything like that, but right now and in the recent past, we've seen USC go 5-7 a couple years ago. We've seen them; they just came off 7-5. They go 9-3 last year. Lincoln Riley's not going to be on any kind of hot seat. The entire fan base may not be completely overjoyed with that, but they'll be fine if they go into the Big Ten and they go 9-3 next year. If Ryan Day goes 9-3 next year, oh my
dumpster
word!
Fire.
Yes, people are going to be chasing him out of town.
I mean, it's just the expectations are insane. I just, like I said, I mean, I get as an athlete, you should want pressure. It makes you better, to be under pressure. So, I mean, I know it sounds, bad of me to say I wouldn't want that pressure if I was in that situation. But I'm just saying, though, that expectation level for Ohio State, it is just through the roof. So I just hope Will Howard can meet it. That's all I can say.
Yeah, just imagine those games that Kyle McCord's going to be playing this year. Wonder what's going to be going through his mind when he's looking around the stadium in the Carrier Dome and they've got a noon kickoff against Wake Forest on the ACC network. And there's the crowd's just kind of like half there. They're not even paying attention. And
yeah, I mean, they're probably on their phones watching Ohio State on Fox. They're not even watching the game. And I mean, the thing as well is just cracks me up is Syracuse beats Boston College 24-17. And it's way to go, McCord. We're back. Syracuse is so good. And it's I didn't get this much credit when we beat Penn State over at Ohio State. What's going on here? It's insane. I mean, the fans' expectations. I mean, Syracuse would just be happy to win 7-8 games. And if Kyle McCord could do that, they'll love him. But at Ohio State, 11-1, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks, but a 1-score loss to Michigan out the door. You're terrible.
He's playing in the national championship game Monday night. That's the deal.